Hello and welcome to the January special event. Here we're going to be having a bit of a boss battle. I did have to make a few changes to the rules because it turns out I was a little ambitious. Most notably, physics update per second is going to be at 60 because 90 was too slow. We are also changing the tournament. Instead of a 5-minute time limit, we are going with no time limit whatsoever. So let's start getting these added though. First, and most importantly, as you may or may not be aware, whichever fleet gets added, or whichever fleet or ships get added to the fleet first, dictate the color of the entire fleet. And so, to that effect, one of these ships is going to, or one of these submissions is going to choose the entire color scheme of the entire fleet, and I think we all know it has to be Sumpelcrum's Pork Chop Hero, which you can see. You can kind of see, but it has some writing on the back of it that's pretty fantastic. But mostly it's just a large Sentinel brawler. But the writing on the back of it is pretty amazing. Now, let's see. We've got some profanity going on in here. Yeah, nice, nice. So. What really sold me on this is actually that using this as the base template for the fleet gives the fleet a very vibrant color, which is fantastic. Some of the other colors are a little washed out, but the Pork Chop Hero, because it's so bright, it causes everything else to be bright. And I am going to go over the writing on it real quick once we actually start the match. The other main candidate for which color I liked was actually AFK by Song Jiang. The blues are just really pleasing, and it causes everything to kind of be this blue, which kind of kind of makes it difficult to really appreciate all the small ships since they kind of blend together. But it did look nice, and it was the front runner for a while. But next, the Cryo Phoenix Purifiers were actually the first fleet received. Which you can see, this is a very large Tinkerel sniper. The gun runs basically the entire length of the ship, and then who doesn't love tiny little drone-wielding distractors? Next submission we got was Escorts for Trading Fleet by FGD. These are a pair of Terran antimatter kiters. Overlapping shields are going to be a bit of a problem if the boss has a whole lot of AoE, but as long as the antimatter kiter keeps moving, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Next on the list, we got the Kite Baby fleet by Xderp 7. Kite Baby being similar in a lot of respects, it's got the 3 antimatter crabbers, which are pretty solid, but not quite as fast as Escort ship, but also not quite as large of a target. And then we have some distractors. The Space Webbers are using rockets and torpedoes, which and some missiles, which are always good weapons to have against something large and kind of scary. The Drone of Hell, I think, is mostly just a point filler and a distractor. With a little luck, they'll get their job done, but we're not going to see them at all. They are way too small. Then we got the Jupiter World Ship from Odinson. We've seen the Jupiter World Ship a few times before, but it was met with a lot of success. It's very durable, its guns are mostly off-center, so as long as it keeps pointed toward the boss, it should be able to apply its damage for a while. A pretty solid choice all around. Then we got the Orion-class Ferolder Mark 3.5 Stubnose. The Stubnose is actually an adjustment that was made for another tournament because the original ship was too large to get in for the border, and you can't, or there's a CVAR that you can use to control how big a ship can be in the tournament, and the Stubnose was an adaptation on that. And when we saw the Stubnose before, it actually performed very well. But it didn't make it in time for the actual tournament itself. It was just part of the after party. Then we have AFK by Song Jiang. These ships are all very distinct and very gorgeous. I especially like that some of them, like the SF-33, are asymmetrical, but like deliberately asymmetrical, as opposed to a module just facing the wrong direction. You can also see, as I'm dragging them over, there aren't too many that are stacking up. A lot of these are distinct ships, which is even better. Like, of his total fleet, he had 12 distinct ships out of, what's that, 15 total submissions? Or 15 total ships in the fleet. Really nice. Kind of a balanced weapon load, a little bit of everything. A little heavy on the plasmas, which is not a bad thing in my opinion. Then we have the DSF Star Opal, which is Duke Slayer's monster. And what Duke Slayer brought was a crystalline ship with a core of plasmas in the middle and a whole lot of space. An alarmingly large number of thrusters too. This thing actually really does move. And you can kind of see now the difference between the original colors that they were submitted and the colors that they get painted. Next we have the Very Rider by Miku Symphony, which these are hard to see in their native color, but it's 4 little kiters. They've got missiles, some torpedoes, some lasers. All around solid ships, but really fast, very heavily overlapping shields, which we also saw up here on the escort ship. The overlapping shields work really well against direct fire weapons like plasmas or very small splash radius like the B-point defense and rockets, but very poorly against large splash radius like torpedo launchers and things of that nature. Next up, we have the Albany class supercruiser by Toxico. This ship actually was my mistake. It's a little too large for the CVAR, so I'm going to have to adjust the CVAR to let it in. But it's a rather large tanky ship, plasma cannons, you know, pretty common weapon setup. And we've seen a few of these from Toxico in the past. Accidentally exited. And then we've got the Real Quick Like by Debris, which I think is less a description of the ship and more of a description of how long it took him to create it. The Real Quick Like is much like Duke Slayer's ship. You can see it's got the spaced armor, it's got the core of condensers in the middle, although unlike Duke Slayer, his weapons aren't overlapped, just his thrusters. And that kind of adds a little extra space, reduces vulnerability to splashing, but kind of also decreases how focused the weapons can be, which could play well if the boss has a lot of defense or a lot of splash damage, but is also kind of disadvantageous if the boss has a lot of splash weaponry. Then we've got Death Fleet by Death Not Taxes. This is actually a first-time submitter, but I'm not counting it against his first-time submission since this is a very unusual tournament. And this guy, his biggest ships are the Flying Sorcerers, which had to go through some revisions. They used to be completely round, but it turned out that there's a fitness requirement to get into the tournament, and so they had to lose a little weight. But overall, they're pretty interesting ships. They do have a thrust symmetry problem where if a target's behind them, they can't figure out how to maneuver. Otherwise, though, pretty standard little distractor types. I'm not sure about these antimatters on a tiny chassis. It seems a little expensive and a little vulnerable, but with all of the other fatties in the way all the other fatties on the field getting in the way, those might actually be able to survive. But again, that's highly dependent on spawn and what happens really quick. Then let's see, let me look at what chat's going on about. Yeah, Darkwing Demon's concerned about nukes. That's interesting. Alright, so now we have the Tau Battle Group, which is our other Tinkle submission. Now you've got the Bikeel Artillery Cruiser, much like the first Tinker we saw, the Purifier Omega. The large cannon runs pretty much the entire length of the ship, although the shields are less fully utilized. You can see there's a lot of empty space in the shields and a lot more of the shields in general. He also has shields at the tips rather than spacing them in the middle. I think a lot of this is that the Bikeel Artillery Cruisers don't have any stacked modules at all, which I can respect, but it does kind of force you to spend a lot more to get the same effect. I think overall the Purifier Omega is probably going to hit a lot harder because he can spend more on maneuverability and capacitors, since he doesn't need 6 shields, he only needs 3. But next on our list, my phone fell asleep, the Applebees by Kamikaze Dalek. The Applebees are very bad at serving you food, but very good at serving you speed. It's a B submission, which gets very lovely shade of red with this paint job. The most of the little guys are pretty standard B ships. The big guys, I think, have drone launchers? I forget exactly what he has, but the Bs only have really 2 weapons anyway, so it's either Doom Beams or drone launchers, and these don't look like Doom Beam ships to me. So we'll see how that goes, but I fear for the B's well-being, especially if they want to get up close and personal. We next have bombardment vessels, which are a lot easier to see after the paint job, but they are carrying a bunch of very long-ranged weapons, and I believe these are a farmer submission? Yeah, they're farmers with the healing beams. So, oh yeah, the shard launchers. I forget about the shard launchers, and actually I think the Applebees might be using them, now that I think about it, but I could be wrong. But the bombardment vessel is carrying the medic beams, which will help sustain a little bit, provided that the ship in question doesn't get pretty immediately destroyed. Then we've got the Spaz HHB by Husk, which is the Hammerhead battleship. And actually, let me see this, because people were saying you could do that. Yeah, you can't just drag the fleet over, you have to drag them over one at a time. That's what I thought. But the Hammerhead battleship is the main flagship. It's too large to really see any detail here, but basically the whole ship is just kind of laden with guns spaced throughout, all the little orange markings that you can maybe see. And it's supported by 3 of these torpedo fighters, which are each carrying torpedoes, some point defense, and I think a rocket launcher in there somewhere. But mostly I think the torpedo fighters are there to fill points and try to be useful. Up next we have Pisces by Quan. We've seen Quan a few times in the past, and this time I think he named it Pisces because it looks vaguely like a fish, which I can support. Export the assembled raid fleet. Yeah, I could do that. Let's see. So the Pisces kind of looks like a fish and is carrying a pretty. So Quan is one of our competitors from China, and a lot of the Chinese meta game revolves around having a large ship with your core very recessed. Like I think his core is back here between these 2 orange dots in the middle, and the guns you can see are largely off center. The idea being that when the ship fires, it always aims straight at the core. And so if your guns are off-center, they survive longer. You see that build strategy very frequently in the ship set of the Chinese competitors. And I think that might serve rather well, provided the boss is drilling directly down the center. Then we've got Faithful Axiom by Braided Headman. These things I didn't get much of a chance to look at, but I think if they're anything like what I expect, they're going to be fairly similar to a previous one that we saw from Braided Headman, where they're going to be rather mobile. They'll engage, loosen pieces, disengage, regenerate, and come back in. But they're carrying antimatters and a few other like torpedoes, burst lasers, a smattering of Terran greatest hits weapons, which I don't think is the wrong way to go about it at all. Then we've got the Experimental Battlecruiser by Clem Hazard, and this thing, I really like the way this looks, and the design on it is really interesting as well. The Experimental Battlecruiser is essentially a kiter with a giant disc of armor, but the whole disc is held on by a single block at the front of the ship. And that block actually, if you blow the block up, the ship will get tremendously more maneuverable and will immediately disengage to use its weapons at range. It's actually a really clever design, and I've been trying to get something similar for a while now, and I've been a lot less successful than Clem Hazard was. Then we've got the Pester Spheres by DCH789. Another first-time submission, but also not really counting. These things are all identical. They're carrying 2 railguns. They're a little light on the thrust, but because they're railguns being the primary armament, I think they'll probably be okay, at least until the front line, or at least as long as the front line holds up. That way the Pester Spheres will be able to survive a little longer because other things will be in front of them, and they don't have to worry about taking the damage directly themselves. Then we've got the Esoteric Order of Valkar making another appearance. Alfeather ships, as always, are gorgeous. This one you can't really see shit though because it's covered in shields and everything's hyper stacked. But rest assured, this thing has modules all over the place. They're connected very precariously, and it's designed so that when it does explode, it's just going to throw parts everywhere, and I fucking love it. Alright, so next up on our list, and last of our competitors, is Farmer Joe by Splinter, which is, as the name might suggest, a farmer ship. The front of it is covered in heavy turrets, which are going to cause all sorts of mayhem. It's also got a bunch of HC2s, I think they are, the higher rate of fire HC series. Basically, all of its weapons are kind of in this front half of the ship, and the back half is mostly just support stuff. So with a little luck, maybe if the front half gets destroyed, Farmer Joe will disengage, but as it is, Farmer Joe's going to try and fight really close range. But now, so that we can get the, in order to get Toxico's ship in the tournament, we have to max radius and turn this up a bit. But, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and export these since everybody wants them exported. Now, though, is anybody excited to see some sort of the boss? Because there's this folder here named Raid Boss, and I think the boss is in there. So let's take a look at what we've got for a Raid Boss. We've got the Splintech Industries Red Phosphorus. Now, you may have heard of Green Phosphorus. So, Red Phosphorus is a little different. And we're going to look at this in-game because it is way too big to be looked at in the thumbnail and really appreciated. So let's go ahead and see how the Raid holds up. So, Splintech Industries Red Phosphorus against the Raid. Now, one of the other things I said I wanted to do was take a look at the writing on the back of Sumplecrumb's ship. So, you know, Brawler Life, Murica, and Porker for reals. So, you know, there's a little something going on there. Now, the Raid Boss itself, I really like these burst lasers are so far away that generally they don't fire and they just glow, and it looks fantastic. It's plasma cannons, armor and stuff. I don't know what these are. I'm sure it'll be fine though. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff along the seam here. That's all fine. But let's see how it goes. Let's get some nice little overlapping in here. Although this should clear up because it's Terran and Farmer. It's not Sentinel. But let's get round one going. And immediately you can see some damage attempting to be laid out by some of the Tinkerals, but Red Phosphorus now living up to its name. Those central mounted guns are fantastic, and there you can see the burst lasers discharging. That's actually an AI flaw. When the AI kills its target, it just discharges all of its charged weapons in the whatever direction it was aiming, which is pretty devastating. But it hurts to see it when it happens. And I didn't look at these, but these purple guns on the side here are Also, not something you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about that at all. And that glowing effect, reaching across the ship, I wouldn't pay that any mind either. In the meantime, we've got, this is the cryo Phoenix Purifier I was talking about. It seems to be getting pushed around. Like I said, Duke Slayer's ship is actually very quick, and you can see it charging into close range, which may be a bit of a problem for this thing. One of the things I did mention is that the ship for Clim Hazard can disengage, but it kind of got itself schwacked by all those centrally mounted weapons. And there you can see another discharge, so the boss must have killed somebody else. And plenty of cannons just strewn about the ship. You've got to love the sheer volume of fire coming out of this guy. And unfortunately, autopilot camera is basically useless in here. Because there's only one ship on the boss's side, the camera will try and just zoom in on that ship so you can appreciate it, which means you won't really get a good perspective on everything else that's going on, like the Purifier here, trying to bring its guns to bear, but the boss itself is vomiting forward a lot of stuff in general. And here, some poor little guy getting caught. And there goes another one. As I do appreciate that Splinterman has dubbed it the Burst Laser Salute. The raid doing a fairly good job though. The boss has thin armor in places, and Duke Slayer's Darkstar has actually done a good job, or I think it was called the Darkstar. Duke Slayer's crystalline abomination has actually done a good job of kind of lodging itself in a place where it's largely safe from all the scary guns. The burst lasers are cutting through it slowly but surely, and all the cannons on the side, but it has gotten a fair chance to do quite a bit of damage. As we see another of Song Jiang's ships come charging in. Very ornate. Very reckless. But this could be a bit of a problem for the boss. You can see the guns aren't focusing on this giant ship that's hugging it in the back. A very big death grid here going on. And you can see in chat, Splinter is talking a bit about how he crafted this monster. The scoreboard looks like it's in favor of Red Phosphorus, but one of the big things to keep in mind is that the raid actually has about 175,000 P worth of ships, whereas the boss is only 100,000 P. So it's it looks like the raid is losing if you just look at the score, but a big thing to keep in mind is that the raid has a lot more to go, and some of the big ships in the raid are still getting to the fight. And like the world ship is turned around in the wrong direction. Farmer Joe is, Farmer Joe, apparently. Toxico's Albany class is still working on it. Debris' ship hasn't made it in yet. The Ferelder is still locked out here. This is what I was talking about with the Flying Sorcerers having a problem figuring out what to do. It kind of got pushed a little bit, and now it's facing the wrong direction. The world ship is also facing in the wrong direction. It definitely needs to be pointed the other way. But it's making the decisions that it wants to make. Big blast coming in from the Purifier at this point. Let's just watch that zoom in. And another burst laser salute. Oh, the Purifier missed. He was out of range. That is unfortunate for the Purifier. You can see the Pork Chop Hero, our Sentinel guy, which might actually be the most durable ship on the field for the raid. Although it does have some very stout competition. And I mentioned that this guy kind of has weapons just more or less everywhere. If you've ever played a game called Space Pirates and Zombies, this is modeled after the Hammerhead battleship from Spaz. So that could be something worth looking into if it's another game that I've heard the term and I really like it. The buildy shooty spaceships game. And this time though the Purifier didn't whiff, taking a nice solid arm off of the boss. You can see the boss was symmetrical. So all of the things that you're not seeing on the right are because they've already been lost. And some of the centrally mounted weapons, I think, have also taken hits. But Duke Slayer's ship is all but gone at this point. And Simple Crumbs is struggling. But Quan's is doing very well. The bulk of the front of the ship, it's carrying a lot of torpedoes, but it doesn't really need any of that stuff in the front to really function. So it hasn't taken any significant damage. And like I was saying about the core being recessed, you can see the core all the way back here in the middle. It's a little close to the generators, so if it does get the generators, I think the core is just going to go up. But getting to the generators is a bit of effort. The boss now orienting on the Pork Chop Hero. It's a real porker, but it is getting pushed away by the impacts from all of those centrally mounted guns. And Braided, your ships are... Here's one of yours, Braided, running around, doing stuff. It's a little hard to see all of the smaller ships because the bigger ones sort of just dominate the field of view. But let's see, what do we have out here? Some Song Jangs, the railgun guys. So what's going on in the peripherals. And here was one of the Applebee's, which is in fact launching a bunch of drones, as expected. The good part about having like no game speed is we don't have to worry about much of this stuff. We can just kind of fight it out. But now you can see the raid is largely caught up on points. I think the raid may actually take the raid boss. Ooh. Burst laser salute. Somebody got dead. And those long-reaching main weapons taking apart this poor little guy. He was having a bad day right there. The raid boss does have slightly superior range to basically anything the raid has, but the large guys like Quan's ship here, or the Pisces, are doing a very good job of protecting these little guys. You can see most of the little guys are still alive on the field. And Sumpelchrome's ship trying to regenerate and make its way back in. But we are running at some serious time dilation, so it's going to take a little while. And do keep in mind that this is at 60 FPS, or physics updates per second, so we are running this faster than it would have been if I had done this as originally stated. It's a hell of a fight. Ooh, this is going to go very poorly for this escort. It did manage to squeak away though. All of its shields went down. It's just... one of the generators got ruptured. And that was it. And this Cryo Phoenix Purifier, you can see, is bringing some serious gun to the field, but it does have a bit of a difficult time actually staying trained on target. If it stayed oriented a little bit better, I think it would be shredding the boss. That's the one bit of solace that the boss has, I think. They are slowly pushing the boss back toward the wall, though. And here you can see debris coming in from the back. Look at those. All those plasma cannons. Well, condensers, I guess, if you want to use the right term. But crystalline plasma condensers are one of the strongest weapons in the game in terms of raw firepower. And this thing is carrying no shortage of them. You can see, even just glancing by, as it rips an entire layer of armor off. And the pork chop here eating another big burst from those main guns. Red phosphorus doing work. Although the main gun's turned off, they really could have kept firing, but the red phosphorus has now acquired the debris ship instead, and as a result, the Sumpelcom's pork chop hero managed to survive the volley. Very fortunate for Sumpelcom here, and a whole lot of pain being dealt out in both directions, but overall, no ship on the field can outdamage these main guns out of red phosphorus. As you can see, this massive pile of crystal armor just getting melted. And there's a lot of damage getting dumped into this poor guy real fast. And now the crystalline plasma condensers, you can see, are expiring. They can't even reach the boss anymore. And I do believe that is a dead ship. Debris ship was very brave and did a lot of damage, but ultimately fell victim to the main weapon battery. And as for whether or not Quan's ship survived, it is very much intact, but he has very low maneuvering thrust capability. He's mostly forward, and as a result, it's trying to back up. And Odinson's world ship is kind of doing the same thing. Even though he's mostly forward thrust, the AI has decided that backing toward the enemy is the appropriate response, as has the Ferolder. I don't know what's going on, but I think that might just cost the raid, because now half of the heavy hitters of the raid aren't even involved. Meanwhile, the boss is slowly dealing with things, but this purifier on the back doing some real harm. Even with a 25 generator limit, Tinker cannons are very serious threats. You can see both of the large Tinkle ships, the purifier over here and the artillery over here, are alive and well. I don't even think they've really been scratched, and they have been fairly steadily picking away at the boss. The only problem is the purifier is having a very hard time staying oriented. Like, he's not even looking at the boss, and part of that may be that it's just trying to dodge incoming projectiles, but part of that may be otherwise. And yeah, Owl is doing work. Here is the Esoteric Order ship. You can see it's kind of constantly assembling and reassembling itself. I don't know if that's what he was going for, but I think it looks fantastic. It did lose some sections up in the front, but that is a lot of big guns. Well, I think it's a bunch of railguns. You can see the hit from the railguns dislodging a few of the thrusters of the boss. And here we have some clipping going on. Real unfortunate for both those ships involved. Once large ships like that start to clip, neither one really functions very well anymore. And one of the unfortunate side effects of turning down physics updates per second is clipping tends to be more common. And I think no, not the pork chop here. The boss is trying to engage somebody else. You can see the boss has taken a lot of damage at this point. It's lost one of its wings pretty much completely. It's taken a huge hit on the other wing. All of the burst lasers on the outside are gone. It used to have those rings of burst lasers that glowed and look awesome. But apparently the raid's not going to allow the boss to have nice things. Yet another volley from the Esoteric Order of Volkar, causing all sorts of harm. And Sumpel here, another thing that Sumpel's bringing is a bunch of these Gauss beams, dealing pretty reliable damage at reasonable ranges. The Gauss beams actually outrange the cannons from Sentinels, so those can hit even if the cannons can't quite, but the Pork Chop Hero eating another big blast in the face. It was largely regenerated from its last little interaction. And then the Valkyr ships just sometimes explode for no reason. They just do this. This is just a thing that they do. But it does look like a shield is missing from somewhere up in here, but not sure why it hasn't even begun to try to regenerate that yet. I do think we're starting to see time speed up a little bit now that half the field has been cleared. But the raid is still fighting on. We just have basically everyone facing the wrong direction. Look at this. He's driving backwards, he's driving backwards, driving backwards, driving backwards, driving backwards, driving backwards. Even these littler ships are doing it. That is weird. The boss is causing some odd behavior in some of these people, I think. The boss seems to have cast a massive entanglement on the entire raid. And now we are seeing some of the smaller guys start to eat these forward-firing weapons. And they are definitely not well suited to the task. And it is still alive, kinda, but you can see it just kind of spewing debris. And yeah, the boss has been shoved into the corner. And you can see the hammerhead still behaving, so that's good. It is still pointing the right direction, but it is being a little skittish. Standing off a lot further than I would have, than I'm sure would have been preferable. And we've got a little bit of, it wasn't overlapping, the thrusters had just gotten stuck on each other. Which can happen with exterior thrusters. I missed the explosion. And now you can see a few of the pester spheres getting caught by the forward cannon. And the pork chop hero eating another one right to the face. It's not just brave, it keeps coming back for more. Some sort of glutton for punishment. And one of the pester spheres got a little too close to those rearward guns. It's also worth noting that, among other things, it's carrying several large guns on the back. I think mortars and maybe Bolsheviks, stuff like that. The boss has more vulnerable angles, but no angle is safe. They're all dangerous. And here is one of Miku Symphony's ships. Oh, and that is unfortunate. It just ground itself to death on the melee spikes. It's a hard day to be a soft ship. And yeah, Owl was back in action for a second, but it looks like he ate some damage to the face and is retreating. So it will, with a little luck, come back and be healthy again. The raid is doing fairly well though. The boss certainly feels like he's on his last legs, and with the pork chop hero locking in on the side like this, the boss isn't going to be able to get those main weapons to bear, and that's going to be it, I think. Just a couple more volleys from those cannons, and there probably won't be a boss left. At least if they could fire in the correct direction. And another big blast from the boss. But you can see how thin and small the boss is now. That hit point bar is low. It's time to burn your cooldowns, gentlemen. Ooh, the tank roll. Ah, that is a good volley there. And the raid wins round 1. Well done, gentlemen. But let's be honest, I was never going to make this a 3-round match. You see, because this boss has phases. And you've beaten phase 1. But let's check out what phase 2 looks like over here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, blue phosphorus. Now, blue phosphorus, I don't know what blue phosphorus does, actually. I've not seen blue phosphorus yet. So let's find out what blue phosphorus does. Ooh, and right out the gate, it's got some snot cannons pointed forward, lighting up the raid a little bit. And I do like this sort of ring shape around the outside. Blue phosphorus does appear to have superior range to red phosphorus at the very least. And here we've got, what are those? Are those blasters? Did you put red weapons on here, Splinter? Also worth noting is that this boss appears to be very much so a spinner. You can see it very slowly rotating. That's going to give... It's going to have 6 different snot cannons, at least, facing in various directions, and that's going to give it really good rotating coverage. Oh man, and look at all the lasers just exploding. The burst salute is real on blue phosphorus. Splinter has really done it up with this one. We've got... What are those? Oh, those are the spinal lasers from the spiky plants. Nice. Blue phosphorus is definitely a dangerous beast. You can see it's got melee spikes, it's got melee spikes. We've got tempests and phasers in here. Boom! Another ship bites the dust. And Clem, you're here. This is how big you are? This is how big you are. And what are these? Is it also... Oh, okay, no, those are gauze there. Okay. Or gas or whatever. Oh, that's awesome! This thing is going to be even better than I thought. Alright, so those, it's also carrying, I'm guessing somewhere around the center of it, a bunch of, the spiky plant missile launchers as well, with the missiles being flung in every direction. And no, this is not modded, this is vanilla. And you can see Debris was the first big ship to make it there, followed very closely by Duke. Our crystalline guy's getting in there a little early. Should be pretty interesting. Ah, there's where they are. So it's these. That's ridiculous. But blue phosphorus, I suspect, has no problem engaging targets on all sides at the same time. And we saw before, one of the big things that aided the raid was they could safely deal damage in every direction. And, or they could deal damage in every direction. And on red phosphorus, it was really only in the forward direction that was dangerous. But now, every direction is dangerous. And you can see the front of Debris ship holding up pretty well. It's lasting a lot longer than it did against red phosphorus, which leads me to believe that red phosphorus did more damage. But the fact that there is no even remotely safe angle on blue phosphorus means that there is no opportunity to safely attack, or even relatively safely attack. And we saw Porkchop Hero managed to do a lot of damage by tagging red phosphorus in the side and hitting from a more vulnerable angle. But on blue phosphorus, there doesn't appear to be one of those. And yeah, the point gap is real. And unlike last time, blue phosphorus is 175,000p. And matches up pretty well with the raid. So a big point gap like this is pretty legitimate. And yeah, Porkchop Hero I do like is primarily pink, while everyone else is that kind of bluish purple. The Albany class supercruiser coming, or the I think it's a super cruiser, but it's the Albany class. Coming in on the side. Looks like it's actually going to get involved this time. I don't think it got to get involved on red phosphorus at all. If it did, it wasn't much. But Pork Chop Hero, living up to his name again. Going to charge right in there. Annihilators, Gauss beams, everything. It just works. Get in there, you get him with the guns. Take damage for the team like a champ. And the Star Opal is... doesn't look like he's retreating. I think he's getting pushed around by recoil. Or, well, by impact. And looks like Pisces is helping the Pork Chop Hero get into close range. And a small ship gets introduced to melee spikes. Quick, everybody, hide behind the bacon. And now we're actually going to get to see Clim Hazard, I think. Launching a little bit of dangerous toward the boss. Although, of course, being quickly blotted out by a Tinker gun. Poor computer is crying. And yeah, Quan's torpedoes are doing some very serious work. They are managing to tag or to hit pretty consistently. The blue phosphorus is a spinner, but it's also a slower one and a very large target. So relatively speaking, it's very easy to hit blue phosphorus compared to some of the other ones. And here in the second phase of the boss fight, you can see the raid is dealing some damage now, but struggling much more. Blue phosphorus just does not present a vulnerable angle. And yeah, the world ship did not even get to participate last time. It got turned around and then spent the entire fight trying to drive backward toward the enemy. Whereas this time it is at least close enough to get shot. And look at the damage. So the larger pieces, wow, something died. What do you have in the middle of you? There are some big lasers in there somewhere. Oh, is this thing using... Ah, that's dirty, Splinter. This thing's using obliterators in there too. And here's one of Braided Headman's axioms, making a very unfortunate choice. The kind of choice that doesn't leave a whole lot of learning opportunities. May his successors learn from his mistakes. And Duke... I don't know what your ship's doing, Duke. It appears to be just chilling. It might be trying to kite. Ah, I think we have a crash. Nope. Haha! The game lives on. Is that the core design philosophy of red and blue phosphorus? If it glows, it's going on the ship? And you can see the fatties are holding up a lot better against blue phosphorus than they did against red phosphorus, but the lack of any sort of safe anything for dealing with blue phosphorus is playing havoc with all the small guys. And you would be hurting it enough to prevent it from regenerating, but you see this glowing effect here? This bluish one, not the purple ones? That may or may not be healing. Although I will say the fact that there is a blue phosphorus is really impressive. So Splinter spent the bulk of the month creating and balancing red phosphorus around the submissions that we had received. He was looking at your ships the whole time, by the way, and blue phosphorus he threw together I think today in like 6 hours, something like that. Yeah, healing beams won't replace lost blocks, but it will heal existing ones. So if you don't get enough time to do damage to actually kill the blocks, then, or if your damage gets spread out, then the blocks might live a lot longer. And you can see here some painted blocks that I'm pretty sure used to have other things near them. It has lost some of its outer layer, but it looks like blue phosphorus is going to be a little too much. The real boss fight was against red phosphorus, and the raid totally won that fight. This one is mostly so Splinter can get a little comeuppance. And don't worry, there was a black backup plan in case even red phosphorus and blue phosphorus couldn't do the trick. You guys were going to get to fight green phosphorus, and I guarantee you green phosphorus would have cleaned house. Fighting green phosphorus anyways? I could do that. I love watching green phosphorus fight stuff. I do like the rings of spiky plant missiles. That is obnoxious. And since it looks like it may not be a case, Blue Phosphorus itself is also a two-phase ship. The outer phase, you can see all the thrusters are pointed one way. The inner phase, all of the thrusters are pointed the other way. So if you do manage to break off that outer ring, it's probably going to get much faster and start spinning the other direction, which I think is really neat. And here comes Clem Hazard. Let's see what sort of adventures he can muster. But, of course, Blue Phosphorus, not one to take it lying down. And, you can't really see it because of all the shooting. I do like that the bulk of the guns on this thing are actually from Reds. And there we see the front section disconnecting from the main body. And now, if I was right, the main body should disengage here very quickly. And now perhaps I'll go repair. Ooh, and somebody bit the dust. Got the beam salute. Is Farmer Joe shooting? Oh yeah, he's got his missiles going. But yeah, here you can see heavy turrets, longbows, the HC3s or whatever, all kind of in the back here, or all kind of in the front. And then once you get to the midsection, there's just like the one heavy turret and some lasers, some missiles. But not a whole lot of reverse thrust, so I think if you do cut the front off, it's not going to be able to disengage. And here we can see Clem Hazard working to rebuild himself. And Terran armor is the fastest regenerating armor in the game, which should help him reconstruct himself pretty quickly, but it's having some issues here in the back where modules are stacked a bit, struggling to rebuild itself, and then when the module detonates, it pauses all other rebuilding. World ship taking some big hits, losing like half of its outer ring. And one of the Pester Spheres. Having a rough time of it as it gets clocked by an obliterator. Pork Chop Hero eating quite a few of these missiles. Sentinel's point defense is not so great. Their point offense is pretty fantastic, but their point defense is lacking. And that is unfortunate for Quan. That whole torpedo volley just got taken apart by a snot cannon blast. Only the 3 torpedoes left, and I'm confident they're going to hit the missiles. Well, no, it might sneak through. Yeah! The superhero torpedo! And yeah, all the big guys are a lot more skittish of blue phosphorus than they were red phosphorus. But you can see the outer ring of the boss isn't even cracked yet. Both of the Tinkles are still alive, but they don't seem to be doing a whole lot better job of staying on target here. Well, the artillery I think is doing well, but the Cryo Phoenix is struggling a bit. Let's see, the artillery hit or fall short. Yeah, I missed that torpedo volley. I'm sure there'll be another. Ooh, one section of the boss broke off here. Check that out. Disconnected some of that outer layer. But do keep in mind this is an intentionally multi-phase boss. So, let's see if we can disconnect the other 2. And yeah, dodge the debris indeed. These lighter gray ones, if I remember right, are the melee spikes, which are less threatening to Pork Chop Hero than some of the other things, but melee spikes are can always be a problem. And yeah, that would have been pretty amazing if it became a Titan turbo spinner once you knock the outer ring off. Drive me closer, I want to hit them with my sword. And Farmer Joe trying to get in there with the guns. It does look like Joe and the Hammerhead are inching the world ship closer to the target, though. And the Flying Sorcerer taking some hits to the face. But overall, rather well. Enduring it rather well. Taking that punch to the chin. And then more rings of spiky plant missiles, because why not? Let's see. Oh, are these entire sections held on by that adapter or something? It almost looks like that's all that's really holding them on. Operation Hide Behind the World Ship. And yeah, it's vomiting so many spiky missiles that a lot of things are actually having a hard time getting through. The incoming missiles, a lot of the cannon fire is even getting whittled down by it. Like the yeah, and this purifier seems to have a hard time controlling himself. What does he have? Oh, that's why. He has almost no turning thrust. It's all forward and backward. Got a little bit on the outsides, but as it tries to maneuver, it's just going to mostly back up. Managed to get most of a layer regenerated real quick before the missiles hit. And then the missile nation attacked. Just look at all those rings of spiky missiles now. And yeah, and for anyone who didn't notice, that's the core of the world ship and the edge of the armor where it was damaged. It doesn't get much more close than that. And you can see Farmer Joe is using, I think these are, I can never tell with farmer guns if they're the rail guns or the longbows. Actually, yeah, those would have to be rail guns. There's too many to be longbows. Ooh, the Cryo Phoenix bit the dust there hard. Flew too close to the sun. Even the pork chop hero is having a hard time figuring out what to do about this. It does seem to think that Song Jiang is the problem, though, as it fires an entire volley at its friends. Although, actually, so what we're actually seeing here, these are melee spikes, which the AI treats as hostile projectiles when they're not attached to a ship. So all of the ships that are in the area are going to fire their guns at these, which is what we're seeing right now. They're just trying to clean it up so that nobody crashes into them. But much like point defense, they will still prefer to shoot a ship over the spikes. So if the boss was in range, they'd just be ignoring the spikes, and the spikes could be floating around freely through the party. That was one of the escorts, I believe. Getting the burst salute. And a lot of blaster fire and tempest fire coming out of the boss there. And yeah, they are stuck. Good and proper. The boss is right up on the edge though. Although because of the design I think it'd be alright, but if they manage to catch it on the right angle, they could stop it from spinning on the wall. Yeah, this will take the boss a little while to clean out, but it is doing its best. And I think we might be seeing the world ship retire here very soon. One or two more passes from those guns. Probably all it's going to take. You can see the armor getting real thin here. And Farmer Joe appears to be gone. Poor Farmer Joe. And the world ship. Blue Phosphorus takes no prisoners. And yeah, Splinter always wins because he's on both teams. World ship is dead. I'm pretty sure. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'll be damned. World ship is still alive. That's amazing. The world ship that could not be killed. And yeah, here we can see the flying sorcerers. The boss is off to their right, and they have no way of turning right. The AI can't figure out that if it were to just fire reverse thrusters on one side and forward thrusters on the other, it would be able to reorient itself. That's one of the reasons I recommend having turning thrusters pointed in every direction. And now the hammerhead getting stuck in, good and proper. And feeling the full wrath of blue phosphorus. And the world ship doing alright, kind of. Incoming projectiles notwithstanding. But this too will pass. And obliterated. Down goes the hammerhead. And that I think is one of the Applebees, isn't it? No, that was, I forget whose fleet those were from. But it does not like large-scale incoming fire. I can't say that much. Yeah, I think the big problem we're going to see here is that, like Splinter was saying in chat, blue phosphorus doesn't do focus damage. You can see it's really good at spreading damage out, which gives it a lot of attack angles on a lot of targets, but when it comes to actually killing individual large ships, it struggles. Although I think it can pull it off. It just has to pass over the ship several times. But it also seems to be having a hard time continuing to spin, which is actually working out in its favor. At least now. And Porkchop Hero is still alive. Like a boss. One of the drones managed to make it for a second. Drones over here playing bullet hell shooters. And then suiciding into the ship. As for whether or not blue will manage to repair, don't know. I think it has repaired a little bit. Not really sure. The worst colored fleet? I don't know, I didn't really pay attention to that. But I'm thinking this round has gone on about long enough. I think we get the idea. Blue phosphorus would probably win, if the battle went on, but we'd be here for a while. It doesn't kill so quickly. But the real monster you guys wanted to see, the green phosphorus, the one that could probably kill both of the other two by itself. Swimmingly. Have green fight red and blue. Yeah, I can give it a shot. I'm feeling good about green's odds. Yeah, see, these little guys, you do not want to get close to those little guys. I still think my favorite part about green phosphorus is that it uses guns to turn. And this is what happens when you have unbridled snot cannons. Just this. It accidentally killed Clem Hazard's ship while focusing the world ship. Hey, the Esoteric Order of Valkar survived something. I don't know what it survived, but it survived something. That wasn't yours? Where was it then? Oh, yeah. Valkar's back here. I don't know what that was then. Cheater gun, cheater gun. And yeah, Quan, this isn't the actual boss fight. The actual boss fight already happened. This is just shenanigan round. With green phosphorus doing what green phosphorus does. And now Duke getting brave. Star Apple's like, I'ma get him. I'ma get him. Is Farmer Joe still alive? I don't even see Farmer Joe. And you can kind of see now that time is speeding up how fast this damn thing actually is. Yeah, green phosphorus, just such a dangerous ship. It's like everything about it is murder. And then you guys wanted to see red and blue fighting green. I'm sure this won't die. And yeah, did you want to see Roundhouse versus the Raid, Duke? And yeah, I think green phosphorus has it. He's out of range of red and blue, and not out of zone range. Not to mention these little friendos slowly making their way to targets. Yeah, green phosphorus is something of a nightmare. And then we've got Roundhouse Punch versus the Raid. And Reassembly crashed. So, Roundhouse crashed Reassembly. May note that one in the books. But, I think I'm going to call it there, guys. Appreciate you joining. And, let's all make Duke whimper as he doesn't get to watch his ship fight the Raid. So, have a good one, and I hope you enjoyed.